I never imagined one phone call could reopen wounds I had buried a decade ago. It was a cool autumn evening in Chicago, the kind where the sky hung low and gray, and the wind carried the scent of rain. I was finishing a report at my kitchen counter when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello," I said hesitantly. Then a familiar voice, smooth and calculated, filled the line. "Hello, Samantha. It's Veronica." My stomach twisted. My estranged mother. The woman who had shattered my world 10 years ago. "It's been a while," I managed, trying to sound composed. "I thought you should know," she continued with a hint of superiority. "Your grandmother passed away this morning. I assume you'll want to attend the funeral, if your schedule allows." Her tone was drenched in false concern. I could almost hear the smirk in her voice. The same smirk she'd worn the day she stole my fiancé. "Thank you for letting me know," I said flatly. "I'll be there." I hung up before she could add anything else. But the damage was already done. That night, I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the city lights outside my apartment window. Memories I had long tried to suppress clawed their way back to the surface. Memories of betrayal, of family politics, and of a love that had crumbled in the ugliest way imaginable. Years ago, my mother had always been the star, beautiful, charming, magnetic. People gravitated toward her. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the steady one, the invisible one. When I got engaged to David, I thought I had finally found my own happiness, separate from her shadow. But I was wrong. It started subtly. Her innocent compliments toward him, her constant invitations for him to visit when I wasn't around. I didn't see it then, but I do now. She was weaving a trap. Within months, the man I loved was gone, and she was parading him as her new husband. My mother had stolen not just my fiancé but my sense of self-worth. After that, I cut all contact. I moved across the city, changed my job, and tried to rebuild. Eventually I met John, steady, kind, the complete opposite of David. Together we built a peaceful life with our daughter, Lily. She was 6 now, bright, artistic, full of life. Everything I had ever wanted for myself, I poured into her. But now, with that single phone call, the past had clawed its way back. I found myself packing a suitcase that night. I told John the first was fine, though the tension in my shoulders said otherwise. Lily watched me from the doorway, clutching her sketchbook. "Are you going to see Grandma?" she asked softly. I hesitated. "Yes, honey. Just for a few days." She nodded, her innocent eyes full of concern. "Will you come back soon?" "Of course," I whispered, forcing a smile. As I zipped up my bag, a chill ran down my spine. Something about this trip felt different. The funeral wouldn't just be about saying goodbye. It would be about confronting ghosts that refused to stay buried. And deep down, I had the unsettling feeling that Veronica's call wasn't just about grief. It was about something far more sinister. Little did I know, the funeral would not only reunite us, but reveal a secret my mother had kept buried for 10 years. The morning of the funeral was cold and somber, the kind of day that made even the city seem to hold its breath. As the cab pulled up to the old family estate, I felt a strange heaviness settle over me. The house looked the same as it did in my childhood. Towering oaks lining the walkway, the cracked stone steps leading up to a front door that had witnessed generations of secrets. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, whispers, and unspoken tension. Relatives I hadn't seen in years moved through the rooms, offering polite condolences. Everyone wore that same forced expression, the mask of civility that our family had perfected long ago. And then I saw her. Veronica. She stood near the casket, wearing a sleek black dress that screamed wealth. Her posture was flawless, her smile perfectly measured, her every gesture calculated. The people around her, old friends, distant cousins, hung on her every word. To them, she was still the golden woman who had everything. Our eyes met across the room. For a brief moment, the years dissolved, and it felt like we were back in the same cruel competition I thought I had escaped. "Samantha," she said, gliding toward me. Her voice was soft, but her eyes gleamed with that familiar superiority. It's been far too long. I forced a polite smile. Yes, it has. She leaned in, lowering her voice. You look well. Modest but well. It was a jab, disguised as a compliment, but I refused to bite. You haven't changed a bit, I replied coolly. Her smirk widened. Oh, I've changed plenty. Life has been good to me. I wanted to walk away, but my feet wouldn't move. It was as if years of unspoken resentment had frozen me in place. Around us, the low hum of conversation carried on, oblivious to the silent war unfolding in the corner of the room. I hear you live out in the suburbs now, Veronica continued, tilting her head slightly. A quiet life suits you, I suppose. But tell me, are you still single? Her tone dripped with false innocence. No, I said calmly, though my pulse quickened. Actually, I'm married. For a split second, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe even discomfort, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. How lovely, she said finally, her lips curling into a faint smirk. And your husband, what does he do? He's in tech, I replied. Smart, kind, loyal. Everything you're not used to. That earned me a cold glare, but before she could respond, someone called her name from across the room. She excused herself with a tight smile and disappeared into the crowd. I exhaled, realizing how hard I'd been clenching my fists. My heart was pounding, not just from anger, but from the realization that Veronica hadn't invited me out of sisterly duty or shared grief. She wanted something. As the service began, I found myself drifting through a haze of memories. Our grandmother had been the one constant in my life, the only person who truly saw me. Losing her was painful enough, but standing in that room surrounded by people pretending to care felt unbearable. When the speeches ended and people began to leave, Veronica approached me once more. You should come by the house tomorrow, she said, her tone lighter now, almost conspiratorial. There's something we need to talk about, just the two of us. I hesitated. About what? You'll see, she said, flashing that same knowing smile that always made me uneasy. It's about family, and about the truth. As she walked away, my pulse quickened again. The truth. What truth could she possibly have after all these years? I didn't know it yet, but what Veronica wanted to tell me would shatter everything I thought I knew about our family, and about the man we had both loved. The next morning, the house felt eerily still when I arrived. Veronica had asked to meet me at the old conservatory behind the main property, a glass-walled room where our grandmother once grew orchids. It used to be filled with sunlight and color. Now it looked cold and abandoned, dust clinging to every surface. Veronica stood near the window, her reflection glimmering faintly against the glass. When she turned, her expression was unreadable. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said softly. I almost didn't, I admitted, crossing my arms. But you said you had something important to tell me. She gestured for me to sit, though I remained standing. You deserve to know the truth, she began. About David. About everything. The name still made my stomach tighten. What truth could possibly make any of it right? Veronica exhaled sharply, her eyes darting to the floor. When I married David, it wasn't what you think. He wasn't the man you believed he was. I frowned, unsure whether this was another manipulation. You're lying. You always twist things. Her gaze hardened. You think I stole him from you out of love? No, Samantha. I did it to protect you. I let out a bitter laugh. Protect me. From what exactly? Happiness. No, she snapped. From him. There was something in her tone, a crack, a vulnerability that made me hesitate. She walked closer, lowering her voice. After you got engaged, David started meeting with Mother behind your back. They weren't planning a wedding. They were planning investments, shady ones. He wanted to use your name, your credit, your job position to secure loans. When I found out, I confronted him, and he threatened me. Her words hit me like a storm. I wanted to dismiss them, but something in her eyes, a flicker of guilt, made it hard to ignore. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "I tried," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But you wouldn't listen. You were so in love with him, so sure he was perfect. When I exposed him, he turned on both of us. He used me to ruin Mother's finances, then disappeared with everything." I stared at her, my thoughts spinning. "So, all this time, you weren't with him?" "I was. But not by choice. I was trying to keep our family from falling apart. You think I wanted that kind of life?" It was the first time I'd ever seen her fragile, the mask slipping. Still, something didn't add up. "Then why keep pretending all these years?" Her jaw tightened. "Because admitting the truth meant admitting weakness. And Mother, she'd rather die than let the world see her mistakes." The mention of our mother reignited the anger I'd been suppressing. So she knew too. Veronica looked away. She knew everything. Silence filled the conservatory, heavy and suffocating. Outside, wind rattled the glass panes, a haunting echo of the chaos between us. I finally spoke, my voice quiet but firm. "If what you're saying is true, then where's David now?" Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to answer, but before she could speak, a sharp knock echoed from the conservatory door. We both turned. Standing there was a tall man in a charcoal coat. And when he lifted his head, my heart nearly stopped. It was David. The man who had broken me and supposedly disappeared was standing right in front of us, alive, and carrying a truth of his own that would destroy everything we thought we knew. For a moment I couldn't breathe. David's face was older, sharper, and lined with years of regret. But it was him, the man I had once planned to marry, the man I thought was long gone from our lives. He stepped forward, his gaze flicking between Veronica and me. "I see you both still know how to make an entrance," he said with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. My heart thudded painfully. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "You vanished. You ruined everything, and now you just show up." David's jaw tensed. "I didn't vanish. I left because I had no choice." Veronica folded her arms, her tone sharp as glass. "You mean after you drained our accounts and ran off with the investors' money?" David sighed, rubbing his temples. "You still think that's what happened? Don't act like you're the victim here," I snapped. "You destroyed our family." He turned toward me, his eyes suddenly softer. "Samantha, you never heard my side of the story." I wanted to walk out, but something in his tone stopped me. "Then talk," I said coldly. He hesitated before continuing. "Yes, I made mistakes, I trusted the wrong people. But the money wasn't for me. It was for your mother." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "She was the one pulling the strings," David said quietly. "Every investment I made, every loan, every business deal, she orchestrated it. When it all started falling apart, she made me take the fall. I tried to tell Veronica, but by then she was already caught in your mother's web." I turned to Veronica, but she didn't look surprised. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I told you," she muttered. "Mother doesn't just manipulate people, she destroys them." I stared between the two of them, disbelief swirling in my chest. "So, all this time, both of you have been lying to me to protect her?" David's shoulders slumped. "Not to protect her, to protect you. She said she'd ruin your career, Samantha. She even threatened to make sure you'd lose everything. You were the only one she wanted untouched." The pieces were falling together like jagged glass. My mother had built her perfect life on the ashes of ours. Every cruel smile, every mocking remark. It was her way of keeping control, of reminding us who held the power. "So why are you here now?" Veronica asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. David hesitated. "Because she's in trouble again. And this time she's using someone else, your daughter." My heart froze. "Lily. She's been contacting media people," David explained. "Bragging about her talented granddaughter, and trying to build a brand around her. But the contracts she's signing, Samantha, they're dangerous. Your mother's trying to cash in on your child's name. Rage boiled in my chest. She's not touching my daughter, I hissed. David nodded grimly. Then you'll have to stop her before she ruins another generation. The air between us was thick with shock and fury. I felt the world closing in, betrayal on every side, history threatening to repeat itself. Veronica looked at me, tears glimmering in her eyes. We can't let her win again. For once we were on the same side. I straightened my posture, the old fear burning away, replaced by something fiercer. Then it ends tonight, I said. No more lies. No more silence. As the three of us stepped out of the conservatory, one thought consumed me. By the end of the night, either my mother's empire would crumble or my family would. That night, the rain came down hard over Chicago. The streets glistened like black glass under the city lights as I drove toward my mother's mansion. Veronica sat beside me in silence, her hands clenched in her lap. David followed in another car, keeping his distance. We had agreed that no matter what happened, the truth would come out tonight. As we reached the gates, I felt the familiar twist of anxiety in my stomach. The estate stood like a fortress, cold, extravagant, and hollow. The home of a woman who had built her empire on deceit. Inside, my mother was waiting. She sat near the fireplace, a glass of wine in hand, draped in a silk robe that made her look more like royalty than a grieving daughter. Her lips curled into a mocking smile the moment she saw me. "Well," she said smoothly, "the prodigal child returns. Twice in 1 week. I must be special." I took a deep breath. "You've gone too far, Mother." She raised a brow. "Oh. And what crime am I being accused of this time?" "Exploiting Lily," I said sharply. "Using her name for your fake contracts, your publicity stunts. She's 6 years old. She doesn't belong in your schemes." Her smile didn't falter, but I saw the flicker of irritation behind her eyes. "You always did underestimate me, Samantha. I was simply giving your daughter the kind of future you could never afford." "Don't twist this," Veronica snapped. "You're doing what you always do, using people, including your own family." My mother's gaze shifted to her older daughter, cold and condescending. "Oh, Veronica," still bitter. "You were always so eager to blame me for your failures." "This isn't about me," Veronica shot back. "It's about what you did to David, to Samantha, to all of us." At the mention of his name, David stepped into the room. My mother's expression changed instantly, from arrogance to unease. "You," she hissed. "You have no right to be here." "I have every right," he said firmly. "You destroyed my life, manipulated my marriage, and left me with the blame for your crimes." "Crimes?" She laughed bitterly. "You think anyone will believe you? Look at you, disgraced, desperate." I pulled a file from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. "They'll believe the evidence," I said. "Every fake signature, every transaction under Lily's name, every deal you made through shell accounts. David and Veronica helped me trace it all." For the first time, her composure cracked. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. "I already did," I said quietly. "The police will be here within the hour." Silence fell. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the rain pounding against the windows. My mother's face hardened, but her eyes shimmered with something unfamiliar, fear. She stood abruptly, setting down her glass with trembling hands. "You're just like your father," she spat. "Weak. Ungrateful. You'll regret this." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You taught me what regret looks like. I'm choosing peace instead." Veronica reached out and touched my arm gently. For the first time in years we were united, not as rivals, but as sisters who had finally broken free. When the authorities arrived, my mother didn't resist. She simply stared at me as they led her away, her expression unreadable, a strange mix of pride and fury. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The three of us stood under the porch awning in silence. David turned to me, his voice quiet. "You did what none of us could." I shook my head. "No, we did." Veronica managed a small smile, tears glinting in her eyes. Maybe this time we can finally start over. Weeks later, life began to settle again. Lily returned to her cheerful routines, her laughter echoing through our home like sunlight after a storm. Veronica moved closer to the city, determined to rebuild her own life. And as for me, I started writing, turning the pain, the lessons, and the forgiveness into stories that might help others heal. The scars remained, but they no longer controlled me. For the first time in years, I felt free. Because sometimes, the only way to break a family curse is to face the darkness head-on, and choose to walk into the light together.